That is Hashan Temple Bells. It's from our new album coming out. That's our choir singing. And that particular song is simply speaking of the drawing that occurs when one hears the temple bells in the distance. And so we envision people journeying from where they are with the struggling with the vicissitudes of life, like in a rowboat. The thunder and the rain signify the things that are occurring in our lives that we have to contend with. But when we hear the sound of the temple bell and we start making our way to the temple gate, the peace and the serenity that overtakes us. So I hope you enjoyed that song. Today I wanted to talk, and actually we're not going to be so long today, or actually in the future, because we have just the great gift of our Buddha Master's teachings and all of his pithy sayings. And so many times he would talk about giving us a shortcut or a hack. And so you don't have to learn all these things. There are 84,000 Dharma gates. I mean, we don't have to go through all 84,000. Find one, pick one, and go through that gate to the ultimate. But we spend most of our lives, just going through this gate, coming out, then going through that gate, coming out, going through another gate or method or way of understanding the principles of life. And so that's how we fritter away our whole life, even even with spiritual endeavor, because it's really not about that. But we get so caught up in our reasoning and our intellectualizing and our looking from the outside that we miss the just the simple and when I say clean, I mean unencumbered way of entering into or through a gate of reality and make it our own. I think it was easier for the Buddha's disciples because they didn't have that many. Some, he only saw them one time, gave one Dharma talk. That was it. And it wasn't that they were like so great and so ready, but they took that one saying and made that the focal point or the lens through which they would try to understand all of the issues of life. And sometimes we have so many choices that we can't make any progress. We can't move forward. So I like the teachings that speak about the Bodhisattva leaving home. And I wanted to talk to you today about what home is and where home is for you. So I have very short notes today, and then half of these notes are for you, Songbird. I know. By yesterday, she was sending me, I don't know, some kind of funny text that said, "Oh Lord, please help Pannavati send me this paper that I need." And I thought that was funny. So she's been waiting for 2 or 3 weeks on that one paragraph right there. And I hate to disappoint you, but as I'm looking at it, that's not it either. Maybe together today we can figure that out. So it's wonderful, and it's fortunate when we can find a master that gives us, through his own realization or her own realization, pith instructions that can cut through and help us to, just cut through the intellectual complexities and to just move beyond to a transformative insight for ourselves about something that is perplexing us in life, something to gain self-mastery, mastery over. So they're like, these teachings are like shortcuts. They're shortcuts to understanding, or like a special key that opens a door to our own inner being, and suddenly we see. It's like the flipping of a light switch, that suddenly the light comes on, and you can see how to maneuver, where to go, or that there actually wasn't a boogeyman in the room. There was a teddy bear sitting in a rocking chair. And if we miss this, then we squander the benefit that is right there in front of us. And they call these Vajra shortcuts. And Vajra means it's like indestructible. It's like the diamond cutter, something that can cut even the hardest material or cut through the greatest obstacle in our mind, that which prevents us from seeing a way forward or how to surmount how to surmount circumstances or obstacles in our life, to see what else is in the room, what else is there besides that which is looming large for us, that brings us our fear or our anxiety, or that makes us impotent, or that keeps us from actually attaining the fruit of all of our efforts. And so we don't have to study every route to freedom, or just keep going around in circles trying to find the right method. But when we find something that creates an opening for us, we should just keep going in that way. So it makes us realize that finding lasting contentment in dharma is not possible. And that's the most important thing I could say to you today, that finding lasting contentment in any dharma that we have is not going to be possible, because unlike the song that we wrote a few years ago, the Dharma stays the same. The Dharma does not stay the same. It is constantly changing. When we wrote that song and we presented it to Buddha Master, we were like so happy. We were so proud of ourselves. We were saying like, don't worry, if things aren't working out for you, this is what you have to realize, is that the Dharma has never lost its power, and that and the Dharma never changes. So you can rely on the Dharma because the Dharma never changes. But that is not exactly the right understanding, because the Dharma is constantly changing according to circumstances. Yeah, but give me the CC. Cause and conditions. Right. It's constantly changing according to causes and conditions, because every cause has an effect, or fruit, but then that fruit becomes a new cause that's going to create the necessity, or create a new condition, or a new fruit. And so many times we miss knowing the right action or taking the right action, because we're basing the current action that needs to be taken on a pre-existing cause, and there has been a fruit that has ripened that changes the whole circumstance. Listen to me, and has now created a new condition, and how you respond to that new condition will determine its outcome, or its corresponding fruit. Not the previous one, but the condition that exists now. And sometimes we can become so dogmatic or so stuck in the scenario of the previous condition that has arisen due to certain causes, that we don't recognize, or we are afraid, or perplexed, or troubled by, or what is it like when you get frozen and you just can't make a move? Paralyzed? Oh, that's good. Any one of those. Because we haven't reconciled the fact that there's the continual playing out of cause and condition. So no cause produces a forever condition. But then when that condition emerges, it creates or becomes a new cause that will bring forth, depending on how you handle it or address it, a new condition. And if we could really see that that is the nature of things in this world, we would not be so afraid when things change. We would not be paralyzed and become impotent when circumstances present themselves that require a different response to the one that was already established upon a pre-existing cause. Is everybody with me? Okay, so I'm saying the same thing 20 different times, in 20 different ways, but I'm just saying this one thing so that it's like a pith saying the Dharma does not stay the same. The Dharma is a Dharma, right? The Dharma is a Dharma. Dharma means things, and all things are impermanent. And if we don't get that, we will not be able, we'll be perplexed, and we will not be able, the good that we would do, we won't do. And what we don't want to do, we do. So you see, this is a way that we have to train ourselves and be responsible for ourselves and handle our own problems and be able to. That's the closest thing to being in the now. I don't like that little catchy phrase about being in the now because it's really not the way it's presented. But if I could say anything about being in the now, it would be to recognize causality as something that is inherently in its nature, constantly shifting and changing, and that's the way of life. Our difficulty is that we don't like things to change if we like what's present, and we are fearful of change because we like to know the outcome of things before we step into it, and that's just not the way it's going to be in this life. That's fighting an uphill battle. So finding lasting commitment in things and people, which are dharmas, and the dharma itself, the Buddha Dharma, is not possible because of change. So to move forward requires a departure. We must leave where we are. Leaving home is one of the hallmarks of embarking upon the Bodhisattva path. I think it's number 2 of the 37 practices. I think number 1 is not really a number 1. It's a statement. Right. And number 2 is number 1, and that's leaving home. So I want to ask you today, what is home for you? And what is the home that you have to leave in order to embark upon the Bodhisattva path? So that came to me yesterday. Well, it's been coming, but just not frontal like that. Or I didn't want to look at it. But it's been a recurring thing for me about leaving home and what does that mean and what is it to leave home. It doesn't mean leaving your mother and your father, or it doesn't mean leaving your wife or your husband. Well, it could mean those things, but it doesn't necessarily mean those things. One has to look deeply into their own mind and heart to see where is that comfortable space for them. What is it that they rely upon as their safety, their point of safety, or their safety net? To move forward requires departure. We must leave where we are. And sometimes we can be in a very good space and we don't want to leave that place. We have found some safety there in that place. And the thought, or we find some enjoyment there. And the thought of leaving that place for the unknown is not palatable. We can find all the reasons to stay and very few of the reasons to go, very few of the reasons to leave. Why? Because we don't know the outcome of the leaving. So we stay with what is comfortable. We even stay with what is not comfortable. And there is a procrastination that emerges from the fear or the discomfort of not knowing what is in front of us if we leave. So sometimes we can't leave until something occurs that makes leaving worth it. You know, I can remember it's 20 years now since I was introduced to Buddha Master and his teachings. And although I loved them then to the extent that I won't say to the extent that I understood them, because it was mostly stuff I didn't understand, and yet I loved what it seemed to beckon me towards, even though I didn't know what that was. But what I did know is that I loved where I was and what I was doing more than I loved leaving where I was and what I was doing to find out really what that was. So I didn't move. And that was 20 years ago. But now I have moved, and I look at how 15 of those years I wasted just because what I was holding on to, I loved more than, it just wasn't worth it to me at that point to leave what I loved. And so I'm just thinking that if I had not been afraid, if I had not been afraid to start over, if I had not been afraid to give up what I had, if I had not been, I wonder what would be available to me now. But that's like crying over spilled milk. No point. Now is the only time. And so I try to go very deeply into an understanding of every decision I make and why I make it. And sometimes I vacillate back and forth because, you can't run the whole 10 miles in a single gallop. You have to go here and look, and then you have to go here and look. And each time you move position, you have a different line of sight. You have a different capacity to know and understand something. You like unpack things layer by layer, piece by piece. And that's how we have to maneuver and move through life. So when you find a person and they're like constantly changing their mind, our idea is that they don't know what they're doing, and actually the truth might be that they don't, and they are unpacking it layer by layer. We have so much confidence in our plans and what we think we know, and that is our stumbling point. But we like to plan things out. We like to come to a definite conclusion. And I don't care if it's like the perfect one or even the right one. As long as I come to a definite conclusion, I can move forward in that until I hit a stone wall, or until I have a realization that maybe wasn't the best. And yet we still cling to our notions of action is right action. And action is not always right action. As we can begin to relax into the stream. It says there's a song that talks about walking in the Dharma stream, and I'm talking about the Buddha Dharma now. It says only so far you can walk by your own ability and capacity. There's a place where the current of the Dharma stream takes over. and you lose your footing, and you begin to flow in the river of the Buddha Dharma, and it takes you where it's going rather than you deciding what your direction is. And if one hasn't step by step entered into this stream, it's like being flown by a helicopter and just dropped into the middle of the ocean. It becomes a terrifying experience. But if one has been just gradually walking into the Dharma stream until the buoyancy of realization begins to lift you and take you according to its own current to the proper destination, then we will be perplexed, and we will be lost, or we will do what we consider great things, then end up being not of much use or virtue or value at all. But if we allow the buoyancy of the Dharma stream, the current to take you along, then there is no self tied up in it. And we can know that even the most insignificant thing that we do is of the utmost and the greatest values. So we stop categorizing and looking at what has value through a worldly lens, and we start to realize the enormous benefit of being accosted by this prajna that overtakes and governs our life, and the ease of this engagement with the Dharma in that way. So it doesn't mean that we don't put forth our best efforts. It's just to say that the best that our best efforts can do is lead us to prajna, and prajna picks up and takes us to the goal. And so we don't have to get frustrated as we go through our ups and downs in life. We don't have to get frustrated when we can't penetrate a certain truth, or when we are not our most virtuous. We do have to see it, but we don't have to get frustrated about it. But just recognizing this is part of the push and the pull that we encounter in spiritual life. The thing is that if we don't get, if we can understand this, then it helps us to understand others. It helps us to be at peace with ourselves wherever we are, there we are, and it helps us to be kindly towards others who display faults. I was reminded of a scripture in the Bible where Jesus healed the 10 lepers, and he told them to go show themselves to the priests. Now, it says in this story that he did whatever he did, and then told them to go show themselves to the priests. And whatever he did at the moment when he dispatched them to go, their healing had not manifested, but he said, go show yourselves to the priests. And it said that as they went, step by step, their healing occurred. So that by the time they got to the priests, the healing had fully manifested. Sometimes I'm not going to move until this, but it requires the movement sometimes, so that as one is walking towards the thing that is for them, towards what they desire in the sense of wholeness, it comes through their effort of walking towards it, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying this to give you courage in your life, because hearing good stuff in this Dharma hall is okay, but how do you use it or activate it to change the conditions in your life? And when I say to change the conditions, I mean change the way you see them, change the way you hold them, change the way you walk through them, and create new conditions that create new causes that are more congruent with what is wholesome, what is good, what is beneficial, what is useful, what is kind, what is loving, what is progressive. And because we as spiritual people have not done that, we have not had the kind of impact in the lives of our loved ones and our acquaintances and the people that we're in contact with every day. And so they cannot see the face of this. There's a song I like to sing, "You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God." So the only God that people are going to see is the God-like quality that is expressed in us. And that's how we make an impact in the world, how we change the world. I mean, laws, we can put more laws on the books. I remember when I went to India and to work with the Dalits, and there had been an atrocity law on the books since 1958, but that doesn't stop atrocities from happening to the Dalits because laws don't do it, people do it. And so to change people, we have to fundamentally live or walk out that change at all times for them to see what it looks like and to be able to emulate it. So we have to go step way, way, way back if we want to change these conditions that we see in the world. And it really starts with us changing us. It starts with us in how we interact with our families and how we interact with our sangha and how we hold a slight or overlook a fault. It's in how much effort we will put forth beyond our good words to those that we love. What are we really willing to do? What are we really willing to give? We haven't really given anything to someone until we can, in the beginning, recognize it as a give. If I wanted to give it to you, then that's not really a giving. That's me following my desire. But he said that good friends give what's hard to give and do what's hard to do. So if I haven't gotten to the hard yet, then I'm just like following my own aims. I'm following, and yet I can, what a good person am I, but I'm just really doing what makes me feel good, so we have to go a little bit deeper. We have to go a little bit deeper than that. We want all of the positions in the front, but we don't know what it costs because we're only doing what we feel like doing. We're doing what we enjoy doing what we love doing. And that is self-placating. So we talk about how everyone admires a martyr, but nobody wants to be one. And so I'm encouraging us today to leave home. And that takes not only encouragement, it takes courage to leave home. Leaving home could be leaving a relationship. We talk about get out of toxic relationships because they don't serve you. Yeah, but does it have to be a toxic relationship? But in order to go further, one might have to leave a relationship. One might have to leave their group of friends. They don't have to be bad friends. They could be bad friends, but they could also be good friends. And sometimes, to go further, one has to leave their friends. One has to, leave that job or give up that business. Um, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's like, well, why can't you have your cake and eat it too? That's the first objection that comes up. Why do I have to give up anything? Why do I have to leave? And the answer to that is that because you're not going to find lasting contentment. There will be the time that the dissatisfaction comes. Now, leaving might not mean that you physically leave, but it does mean that one surrenders their and lessens their attachment to. And sometimes, in that very way of relinquishing attachment, I watched a movie the other day or a while back, and this guy was saying to his fiance, "Say it," and she was saying, "Say, say, say what?" He said, "Say you're mine," and uh, and she said, "I'm yours," But I'm like, "Sister, child, let me have a conversation with you." But it was like his need for ownership of her, and after a while she saw it and she said to him, she said, "That's not love, that's ownership. You want to own me, And he looked at her like so strange, like, "What are you talking about?" He was really perplexed by her statement, because in his own mind, all he wanted to do is give her everything, and he only knew how to do that by having her in his stable, his corral, where he could lavish upon her everything that he wanted to give her. And he says, "What are you doing to me? This is how I have managed to not only survive, but to thrive in this world. It's through this notion of ownership." He considered that leadership, and after leading comes owning. And so, and he thought this is natural progression, and this is the highest and the best that he could offer. Um, and so she taught him a thing or two that made him a better person, And I'm not talking male or female now. I'm talking about the worldly notions that we have in our mind, the signals and the voices of the world that confuse us, and then we bring it over into our spiritual life, our spiritual domain, and we think that this is good. Uh, so. This idea that there is a power that lies beyond the impermanent self was really the basic teaching of the Buddha. That there is a power beyond the impermanent self, and we have to leave home to find it. That's a pithy saying, that there is a power beyond this impermanent self, and we have to leave home to find it. Now, what you do with a saying like that is you just think about it. You just reflect on it. It hasn't shown you the way out. It didn't tell you what, when, why, how. It just drops a pebble into still water. And as the vibrations emanate out, it begins to shift how we see and how we understand. things in a kind of direct way that allows change to occur. And what we find at the end of it is that there is something beyond this sense of an individuated personal self with all of the issues that come with that, the weightiness, the heaviness of carrying that egoic self. One becomes expansive and vast. One becomes able to hold all of the conflicting storylines about everything and everyone. Becomes no one to push against. And that's the taste of freedom. That there is nothing at first that I can't overcome. And then later, it becomes there is nothing to overcome. And then we find that shore that we were trying to swim to or row to is no place other than right here. That which we were seeking was our original face. That which we were longing for was actually strapped on our back. And we find there really was nowhere to go. And there's nothing to do. So I wanted to leave you to reflect on that saying. There's a power beyond this impermanent self. This false self that is imagined through the lens of the sense gates, through what we taste and see and touch and smell and think, through those partial lenses. But when we, in our inner stillness, allow all of that to settle down and fall away, we discover the power that is behind or beyond or before that. Leaving home to find it then is leaving the self. Now, some teachings talk about it in a different way. They talk about it as our lower self and a higher self. And so you could say, well, that's a false teaching if this is true, a true one, or this is a false teaching if that one's a true one. But it's just because of the insufficiency of words. But if you can seize the essence of what is being spoken of, they are the same. The lower self being that self that is manufactured through the piecing together. And it takes the piecing together of all of these. It takes the piecing together of what is seen and heard and tasted and touched and smelt and thought to produce an image of this lower self. And they're saying beyond that, there is something greater. Find your greater self or your higher self. The only difference is what makes that teaching not the most beneficial one is because there's not a recognition that it takes all of the ingredients to create that lower self. So if you break that apart, that's why we do the exercise of breaking apart the aggregates and then breaking down the sense gates to see what came before that. If it is true, then it's always existing, but it's not comprised of other things. Like a cake is not a cake. A cake is flour, sugar, water, eggs, milk, all put together in a certain combination, and and uh, and an operation performed on that mixture to make it a cake. I know that because one time I didn't mix the ingredients together right, and I put it in the oven, and my cake never became a cake. It stayed a pudding. It never hard. I don't know. I did something wrong, or I left something out, or something, but it never became a cake. And so this I that we project, this self that we project, is kind of like that. It has no inherent intrinsic nature, but there is an intrinsic nature of which I have imputed parts on and mixed them together to create a self. Is anybody confused about that? Great. So if we start thinking and looking in that sense, this is what our first leaving home is all about. And if we get that in the beginning, like in the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 1, we won't have any problems. But because we don't get it, then we have all the other teachings to help us get it. So this made me think how we can take some dharmas and say this is deep dharma when we start talking about emptiness. But can you see that it is fundamental? It is actually the beginning, not the end. We just put it at the end because we couldn't get it. We put it at the end because that's the last thing I'm gonna have to do is give up self. I like her. We put it at the end. But if we are willing, it can be at the beginning of our journey. And I love the thought of that. I feel that I'm at the beginning. That I'm at the beginning of the true journey. And here I thought that I was winding it up. And I don't know what to say about it. It makes some people feel uncomfortable. It makes them feel like they've been wasting their time. But I can tell you, we have lived and died 1,000 times, 10,000 times, maybe 100,000 times, and never really took up the journey that leads to our true home. Because we have grappled with this false self, thinking nobody could take the journey, nobody could really leave home. But I can see now that we can leave home. We have found a doorway out. And it doesn't matter whether you're new to the path or a fossil like me on the path. One starts the last leg of that journey. They know. They become a knower of the worlds. It said that Shakyamuni Buddha was the teacher of gods and men, the knower of the worlds. And this was what he came to share with us, that we too could enter into that same knowing. Is it going to make the world a better place? Yeah. But you have to know the floor from the ceiling. Was it designed to take care of all the ills of mankind? No. If that was possible, any one of our great sages or great masters or great Buddhas or great Christs, great, gods would have already done it. Even if one embraces the notion of a creator God, that he would have fixed his creation right, or if it was got messed up, he could make it right. But it's not for that. So we do what we can do to support mankind, but the bottom line is the only way to freedom is to leave this world. It doesn't mean that one physically leaves this world, but there is that state that one overcomes this world. And even if I only take one person with a deluded mind, that's myself out. It makes the world a better place for everybody else. So it's knowing why you embark upon this path and knowing that you have the capacity to save living beings through helping them free their own minds, but it is truly their choice. And that's why we talk about in the four immeasurables, number 3 is wishing that all beings have happiness and not be separated from their happiness. And my heart be glad about that. It allows us to allow people to move at their own pace, knowing one day, one lifetime, if they keep moving in this way, they will take another blot of darkness out of the world. And that's themselves, because only they can do it. And we will find the marvelousness of living even in a world like this. And somebody might ask you, how do you have such peace and serenity? And you can tell them. And the ones that say, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and it's easy to see what other people should be doing. But those very same ones, if you look at their lives, how much are they giving up? They're only giving what they want to give. And just take life easy like this, and the anxiety will decrease. And one will have compassion for people in this world, the good and the not so good. Now that's the beginning of a peace that passes all understanding. And that's the beginning of having a mind that can go through anything, because one is clinging to nothing, no particular dogma, no particular way, no particular view. And when you start abiding in this kind of ease, then your world expands. And it can encompass every living being. I've been thinking, and I'm closing now, I've been thinking about the sister that sat beside me at the forum at FETSA. And this is a person that did not know Pannavati. But then when we sat there to talk, she said, your friend came to me. And she's an activist, very much concerned about war and the atrocities of war, so much so that it's hard for her to have any peace. And she said that Pannavati swooped down and scooped up. In her mind, we had an exercise we had to do, which was to think about like something that troubles us the most about the world conditions, and then apply, loving kindness. And so she said when she did, Pannavati, who she'd heard me talk about him but had never met him personally, appeared in her vision and swooped down and picked up this 6-year-old Palestinian boy that had been blown up and maimed and killed in her imagination. And as he lifted this boy, and this boy was enveloped, she said there was like this golden light all around Deepa. And as his energy enveloped this broken body, the body began to like putting together Rubik's cubes. The body began to come back into wholeness. And as they ascended, because Deepa took the boy with him, as they began to ascend into the heavenlies, the boy went from being like disfigured and blown to bits to being a dead boy, to being alive and vibrant, to being transformed into something else. Just the deeper and deeper he went in the vibration of goodness, the less she saw through her mind's eye. What she saw transformed and changed. And I tell you, this is how the transformation occurs, because what we see happening in the world has come out of the minds of men. And so it's an outpicturing of the minds of men. And as we change what we picture and envision inside, that's the only way that we're going to change the world. Work on yourself, and you will see circumstances change, first close to you, and then moving out in circles. And we'll find that actually that's all we really had to do. So the one who can feed someone, great. The one who can clothe someone, wonderful. We should do all of these things. But the greatest work we can do is to transform ourselves. So thank you for coming. The pithy saying that I wanted to leave with you today to think about is there is a power beyond the impermanent self. And we have to leave home to find it. What is home for you?
So the great wisdom that I received was one does not need deep suffering to leave for home or leave our home. And that was a great gift. That came from Pannavati.
A lot of times when he was going through something, somebody would ask him, and he would let them know, it's really bad, but I'm not suffering. So there's a difference between what we actually go through or what we even witness, but our suffering, is not really coming from that event. The suffering is coming from our own mind. And our own mind is in line with the states that we can enter. So the practice of loving kindness is it seems like simple, but it's extremely deep. To cultivate compassion and altruistic joy is extremely vast. It's like the beginning and the end, to put the mind into a certain a point of reference. And it can be easy to do on a superficial level, but very difficult to do on a deep level. It's easy to love people who love you, but to love people who don't love you, not so easy. That's where the work begins. So we like to stay in our little corners, where people love us. And we just have these love fests and these love bombs, but if you want to test yourself, get with somebody who doesn't like you. And then you know where you really are.
Give a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's why they say that our trials and the people who come into our life that seem to give us so much trouble, that they are our perfect teachers. Yeah. So the next time you come up against something or somebody, just think of them as your perfect teacher. I think that's all that I want to share with you today. Would somebody offer up the merit and close?
May the merit and benefit of our collective and individualized practice get us to the space where we truly realize I am stronger in my letting go than I am in my holding on. And when we find that spot, may we have the bravery and good fortune and friends to realize just this too, and yet that too, so that may we be of truest benefit to ourselves and others, and may we do so with joy and a smile.